Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, and today I am really excited to review Borat's subsequent movie film, which was directed by Jason Woliner and stars Sacha Baron Cohen and Maria Bakalova. And this movie was so incredibly funny. I was just honestly not expecting it. So I'm going to give at first a non-spoiler review, and then I'm going to go into spoilers because there are certain sequences and scenes that are just too good not to talk about. So I want to make sure that I can. So first off, the whole movie is about Borat. All these years later, he's been imprisoned in a gulag because of the shame that he's brought on Kazakhstan from the first movie. But now Kazakhstan wants to get into America's good graces. And so they want Borat to go to America and deliver Johnny the Monkey to Mike Pence because Johnny the Monkey is like their greatest celebrity. And so he goes on this journey to go back to America. And so when he finally gets there, the crate that the monkey is supposed to be in, he actually finds his daughter, and his daughter ate the monkey. And so now he doesn't know what to do because this great gift is, eaten. And so he thinks, well, maybe I can give my daughter to Mike Pence. And so that's the whole setup with the comedy in the film. And I think we all know where the movie goes with Rudy Giuliani in the end, because that's just been in the news everywhere. And that scene doesn't disappoint at all. But the thing was, there were so many other scenes and so many other sequences that I thought were even funnier and they were more pointed. And so while that is the reason that I watched the movie, was to watch that scene, I'm actually glad that I saw the whole film because it was much better than I thought it was going to be. So first I want to go over what works. And what works is that, in my opinion, this was much better than the first movie. And I know a lot of people are saying the first one is better and that this one's very good, but that the first one is better. But to me, the first one is so much more straight comedy, and there was not always a deeper meaning to what that comedy was. So I rewatched the first Borat because I thought maybe I'm not remembering it correctly, and maybe it actually was more satirical than I remember it being, but it really wasn't, except for maybe a couple of scenes that were giving kind of commentary to America. But then there's the one, like naked fight scene, and that's not really giving me much of anything. And so, and that's not to say I don't like comedy that is just straight up comedy. Like 21 Jump Street is one of my favorite movies. I think it is so funny. The Nice Guys, I think, is one of the funniest movies. So I definitely love straight up comedy. But what I love about this is so over the top. This is so hyperbolic. This is without a doubt going to offend a ton of people. And that's the whole point. It should be offending people, and it should be placing a mirror up to America. And that's exactly what it does. And the first one doesn't really do that. It just plays a lot more in a comedic sense. So I really like this second one so much better. Another thing that I just loved about this film was Maria Bakalova, who plays Borat's daughter, Tudor. She was so incredibly good. Now, she's an actress and she's been in movies before, but she's never been in English speaking films before, I believe. And this woman just went for it in every scene. She added a heart to this movie that is not in the first one at all. So in the first one, you have the relationship between him and his producer, but this is just so different by adding his daughter and the sort of nonsense that's taught to the daughter and what she believes to be the truth. And when she sees, wait, is that a woman driving? And she's shocked. She's like, but women can't drive. And she starts screaming, going nuts. But she plays it with such sincerity that you love her and you can't stop laughing. She was maybe in a sense better than Borat, and that is because I didn't see her coming. I didn't see that performance coming. And she is just so funny, and she keeps up with him 100%. The other thing I just loved about about this movie is how they kind of worked around the fact that everyone in America knows Borat. Almost everyone does. So how do you do another Borat movie and successfully have people see him and not recognize him? And so they come up with this whole thing with costumes and how he has to get like dressed up in disguise because people are running up to him and recognizing him as Borat, and he has to deliver this gift to Mike Pence, and he has to do it sort of undercover. So the whole sequence of the film, it kind of explains why he is undercover. And I looked it up, and they would ask, there were certain times where he's not undercover and he is Borat. But before they started filming, they would ask the people like pop culture questions to see if they knew who that character was. And so if they didn't, then they would have them into the scenes, and they had no idea who this guy was still, which is kind of hard to believe. But I guess there are some people who wouldn't know who he is. So I just thought this is a very pointed film. It's satirical. It goes incredibly over the top, so much so that the hope is, I think, that people realize how absurd some of the things are that they take to be true, because he does a great job of juxtaposing certain ideas right next to each other so that it becomes kind of obvious what he's doing. So with that said, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to start to get into spoilers now, because I kind of had this deeper theory metaphor of what I think the purpose of this movie is. And I can't say that without giving away a ton of spoilers. So I would say watch the movie if you're interested in watching the movie. I would also say, if you do not think you're going to like a movie like this, or you think you're really going to be offended, you probably will be. So maybe don't watch the movie if that is the case. But if you're not a person who is easily offended by things, I think this is definitely worth the watch. This is, I mean, without a doubt, this is the best comedy I've seen all year. And I know that's not saying a lot because how much has actually come out this year. But this was fantastic. So that's your warning. That's your pause. Now I'm going to go into certain spoilers within the movie. So I'm going to talk about, kind of in chronological order, the things that I thought were such effective sort of bits that he was doing. And so the first one was when he's going to shop for the cage for his daughter, because when he goes to the store and the salesman is talking to him, and he's like, well, what would be a cage for my daughter? And he, without missing a beat, he looks a little put off, but at the same time, he's like, well, really, you would go for this one. This would be like the best type of cage for your daughter. And he just goes right into it. And all I kept thinking is, wow, this person is actually believing he's selling a cage to someone, and he kind of didn't have a problem with it. And then later it's the same guy, and he's talking about whether this can is going to, how many gypsies the can of like chemicals is going to, kill. How many gypsies could he kill? And the guy's like, well, you know what? I don't think that's a big enough can if you want to kill like 10 gypsies. I mean, it was just absurd. And he was just going with it. And it was like, he would do, and this guy would just do anything to take the money. And he sees the daughter, and it's just like, oh my God, these are real people. Like, these are actually real people that I don't know if they secretly agree with the idea of caging women, but there is one part where he goes, Borat says, well, is this the kind of cage that Trump would put Mexicans in? And they make a joke out of it. And he does the whole high five. And the guy smiled for the first time. It was like, yes. And it was like, okay, there it is. And that is what Sacha Baron Cohen is so good at doing. He is so good at kind of pulling the curtain away into what certain people are actually thinking and who they are, and the sort of deep-rooted racist tendencies that people have. And that's why this film was so much better than the first film, because he's older, he knows what he's doing, he has children, he has a family, and he is excellent at making people feel comfortable and making people feel that he has the same belief system that they do, and then having them admit to things that I think they would never typically admit to on camera. And that is the genius of this movie. This movie is equal parts hysterical, but it's absolutely terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying as well. And so one of the other scenes that really stood out to me was when they find the Instagram influencer person who is a sugar baby, and then she is explaining to Tudor how you have to be submissive in order to get a guy who has a lot of money so that you can take his money and use his money. And then she asks Tudor, well, how old of a guy are you looking for? And she's like, well, practically dead. And then she goes, oh, well, then you want a guy who had a heart attack. And she goes into it like, oh, well, this is simply what you do when you want to marry someone who has a lot of money, who's going to die soon. And it was like without skipping a beat. It was so funny, and it was so hysterical and terrifying. And there are women who do this. I know women who have done this before where they are just not interested in a job at all. And so they're just looking for a guy who has a lot of money. So it was something that I could completely recognize within our culture. And it was hysterical. And the way they just keep making Tudor feel like she's not good enough or worthy, but she like plays right into it. It really was a very funny sequence, and that goes into the makeover sequence, which is really funny as well. There was the one part that just got me, and it was like 2 seconds, is when she's going to get a spray tan, and Borat asked the spray tan lady, well, if we want her to marry someone who's racist, what shade should we get? And the lady's like, well, I wouldn't go above a 5 or a 6. And they just, I mean, it is like without skipping a beat. Same thing with the scene where they are, they want them to write something anti-Semitic on a cake. The woman who wrote it like, oh, this is totally normal thing to write on a cake. And then she made some like smiley faces. But these would be the same people who would say, well, it's my right to not make a wedding cake for a gay couple. So, I mean, just to see the sort of hypocrisy that is shown on screen, it is something else to watch. And the fact that these people know they're on camera, and yeah, they don't know what this movie is exactly, and they're telling them something different. But at the same time, I can't believe that this is the way they've responded on the camera. So there are quite a few funny bits. There's one bit with the Tudor swallows a baby from a cupcake, and it turns into this whole thing, which is pretty funny. But some of the real standout scenes with her were when she goes into the debutante's ball, and there is the dancing scene, and that's the obvious scene that's kind of shocking and funny. But it was some of the smaller moments that I thought were more telling. So one of the guys, the older men, goes up to Borat and says, in the South, we love our pretty girls, we love our pretty ladies. And it was so creepy. Like I can't even put into words how creepy this whole sequence was. And then Borat asked this other guy, how much would you pay to be with my daughter? And he whispers and he says $500. And his daughter was standing right there and starts screaming at him of how disgusting he is. And so it was those really true telling moments in the movie that to me are the most effective in the movie, because it is showing what people are thinking, but not what they show to everyone else. And if you can expose that, I mean, that is the core of what truth is. But to me, what really twisted the movie and made it into something different is that when they were filming it, the coronavirus outbreak actually occurred. So they had to stop filming for a little bit, but then COVID becomes part of the storyline, which was something that I wasn't expecting at all in the movie. And having that section exposed even deeper issues within America. So Borat runs into these guys, Jim and Jerry, and he actually stayed at their house. I believe it was for 5 days. He stayed with these guys, and they are believers in QAnon. So you get some kind of insight into what people in that group are actually thinking. And to me, this was the part of the film that was the best, because there is one sequence where Borat is showing this book of, that the government gives them, that when a woman has a baby boy, the baby boy comes out walking, and it's this whole thing that is so absurd. And the two guys are like, I think your government's lying to you, and I think this is a conspiracy theory. This isn't true. And to have that moment juxtaposed, where just 2 minutes earlier, these guys were talking about how Hillary Clinton captures children, makes them scared so that their adrenal glands go out of control. And then they were very confusing whether Hillary Clinton drinks these children's blood or something from the adrenal glands. Like I wasn't quite getting where their train of thought was going. But they also believe that the Clintons are the ones who released COVID-19. And so you get, and there's no way they're joking, they're not kidding. This is a very firmly held belief that they have. They said that Democrats are destroying the country and that they wish that they could do something to them. But apparently the country says that they're equal, that all people are treated equal. And I'm just watching this like, oh my God. And they were funny guys, and they were friendly. And it was just so strange to watch, because they believed everything they were saying. And then there's this whole thing where they make a song about coronavirus, and so, it is beyond offensive, and the guys came up with it, but then Borat kind of takes it a step further. And when he goes to the rally where he actually plays the song, and you see the way people are singing these lyrics back, and there was one moment. So there is one part where they're singing about, injecting Obama with the coronavirus, and everyone's singing. I mean, it was frightening to see people just singing these kind of lines. But there was one moment where Borat says, "What should we do to the scientists?" And then he says, "Gas them like the Germans." And then you see people in the audience screaming and yelling, "Gas them like the Germans." And then they blur out some faces, and you see some of the guys doing the Hail Hitler. And it was actually shocking to see that visual representation on screen. So, I mean, there is a lot of truths that are exposed, and to see what people believe as true is kind of shocking and a little bit frightening when you have actual scientific proof in the other way, or the sort of inherent racism that he's able to uncover in the movie. It was just, I think comedy is the best way to uncover what is going on in the world. And, if that's the truth, which I believe it is, this does it in the best way possible. The other thing I loved about this movie is the certain people he ran into who had such a big heart. There is one scene where, I was very good during the movie, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is actually embarrassing. And I put my hands in front of my eyes because I couldn't watch it. Now, Sacha Baron Cohen is Jewish, but obviously the character of Borat is not a fan of Jewish people. So he goes to the synagogue, and he's wearing the most offensive outfit that you could possibly imagine. And when I saw him in this outfit and knew he actually went into the synagogue, it was really difficult to watch. And when he runs into this woman who was there, who thought that they were filming an actual real documentary about the Holocaust, and he comes in and he's scared of her, and he thinks, she's going to eat him, and there's all these ridiculous things. Her kindness and empathy towards him is so real. It's so genuine. It makes you feel like the world is okay. It gives you a sense of hope how someone like him, his character could be so cruel, but this woman meets him with such kindness and compassion. And it was a scene that I thought was going to end horribly, but it actually was one of the best scenes in the film. Now, unfortunately, that woman passed away, and now her family is fighting the movie production studio because she didn't know what this was. Now, I read that after they finished filming, Sacha Baron Cohen actually told her what the movie was, what they were doing, why he was acting that way. So she understood, but I don't think the family appreciated the joke at all. So, it's a shame because I could see why they would be upset, but at the same time, it was actually a beautiful moment in the movie to see a human being be so genuinely kind. I mean, it was phenomenal. But his reaction in the context of the film is maybe off-putting, definitely off-putting to some people. But you have to go in with that idea of he's trying to make a bigger point, and you're going to be offended by certain things. The other thing that was amazing is at one point Borat gets Tudor a babysitter, and Tudor is supposed to get breast implants later that night, and the babysitter is a professional babysitter, but she has no idea what's going on. Like, they come into her house and Borat is clicking something like she's a dog and she's following all the directions. I mean, it was very, very funny, but there's a moment where they're in the car driving, and that's like after Tudor is kind of calmed down and realized, oh my God, women can actually drive, and everything that my dad told me was kind of a lie. And the babysitter says to her, you're beautiful the way you are. You're young. You can be whoever you want to be. You don't have to do this. And she's so nice and she's so genuine. And it's just those moments that give this movie so much more of a heart than the first one. So I loved all of those elements. And just to kind of finish up, to me, the whole purpose of this movie was to show sort of the absurdity of lies that go on within America with the idea of like misinformation. So you have Tudor, who to me represents this kind of uninformed population, or a population that's been purposefully is being given misinformation, right? So she firmly believes that, I won't even get into certain thing that she believes, but things that are so obviously wildly untrue, you have to, watch the movie, I guess, for that. But she believes it. And then once she realizes what the truth is, she starts to turn. But Tudor kind of represents anyone who sort of takes what they've been given to believe about who they are and what other people are as fact and not question anything. And then Borat is sort of this patriarchy that is being manipulated by a higher authority. But also knows that some of the things they're saying are not true, and they continue to say it because, well, they're the patriarchy and they're the ones that are, in charge. So it behooves them to actually tell these lies and be a part of all of that. But he's still not the one who's being given the truth, because then it's almost like, because in Kazakhstan, they're giving all of this misinformation. So I think that would represent all of these sites in America that gives all of this misinformation about what people like Tom Hanks are doing in their life. And so, I mean, and that was a really great, funny part as well, because the whole end of the movie, you find out that COVID-19 happened because of Borat, because the country of Kazakhstan infected him to go around the world and infect everyone else. And there's the one scene where they go to Australia and he meets Tom Hanks and he coughs on Tom Hanks, and that's really funny. But it really is this idea of misinformation coming from the top, that there are people who believe that Tom Hanks is part of a child sex trafficking ring, that's a thing that people believe with absolutely no proof, with no evidence. And so what Sacha Baron Cohen does is he's juxtaposing these kind of ideas against the ridiculousness of what the Kazakhstan government is telling him. It's also so weird that he uses a real country. You would think he would use a fake country, but he doesn't. So obviously, to me, that was always a little bit weird. But it really does show how people believe something because they want to believe something, because it fits within their belief system, and they might not look at the evidence, or they may not need evidence or proof to still believe that. So it's very interesting because you see the people in the movie, when Borat says some kind of outlandish, ridiculous things that he's told by his government, they look at him like he's a moron. But really, the whole point of the movie that Sacha Baron Cohen is making is, to look at them as people who are completely misinformed. So it was such a great film. The relationship between the father and the daughter, I didn't think that was going to be anything. It was actually so sweet. It was actually so meaningful. So I really loved this movie. I would definitely give this rating an A. The only things that you could that I would say negative, and it has nothing to do with the movie, is when I'm watching a film, I do like a certain level of artistry. And I mean, this is shot like a documentary, and so you're not getting that. You're not getting the color palette. You're not getting those things. But it is definitely a movie worth watching if this is your style. Thank you so much for watching, and please hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, so that you can be part of the conversation. I love movies so much and love having these chats and conversations. So please leave a comment below if you've seen Borat subsequent movie film, which is also just the best title ever. Also, and I would love to hear what you guys thought. Did you think it was funnier than the first one? What did you like? What didn't you like? And then also, if there are any comedies from 2020 that you really enjoyed, please let me know, because I feel like I haven't seen that many comedies that I thought were actually funny. So I would love to get any recommendations that you guys have. Okay, thank you so much again, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.